let me introduce you to our two guests. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. In Tel Aviv here is a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Neri Zilber. Welcome to the program. And in London, Robert Inlakesh. Robert is a political analyst and human rights activist. As I said, thank you so much. I want to use a word that is probably going to trigger some people here, Neri, because there's some opinion that this decision by the Trump administration means a victory for Zionism. But let's bear in mind the difference between Zionism and Israel, the state itself. What do you say to that opinion?
Well, it's an interesting turn of phrase. I would say it might be a victory for a certain stream of Zionism, the more religious nationalist stream of Zionism that, as you mentioned at the top, has become ascendant in recent decades, has settled the West Bank. So from their perspective, it's actually a very good last day in terms of the world superpower, as you mentioned, at least deeming their settlements not illegal. But I would say that for the future of Zionism as a whole, it might be a less successful day.
Okay, interesting. Robert, you know, I think probably anybody who follows international relations and international politics knows the position of the Trump administration as far as Israel is concerned. What they may not remember is it's not that long ago, a few months, that Mike Pompeo said that he believed quite possibly God sent Donald Trump to Earth to save Israel. I mean, these are really quite dramatic statements from the U.S. Secretary of State, who was the man who made the statement on behalf of the Trump administration. What's your reaction to what's come out of the White House?
It's really psychopathy. I mean, they're recognizing things which they really have no power to recognize. Does it change anything on the ground? Absolutely not. The settlements have been expanding throughout what people deem as the peace process, and that hasn't changed anything. There has been really no push towards anything that could be called a two-state solution. And of course, with Trump's moves like this one, with the recognition of the settlements not being illegal, going against international law, the Fourth Geneva Convention, multiple UN resolutions, for instance, kicking the Palestinian Authority out of Washington, recognizing Jerusalem Al-Quds as being somehow Israeli only, and that Palestinians can never seek having a state which has Jerusalem as its capital. And of course, recognizing the Syrian Golan as being part of Israel. These are just things that the Trump administration ideologically relates to Israel for. But why should we be really, let's say, ashamed of the United States for this? I mean, the United States, it comes off of a past of settler colonialism itself, and this right-wing base that Trump is playing to right now, of course, loves this sort of thing. And on top of this, it also helps Netanyahu at the moment as well. And it puts Benny Gantz, his opposition, in a bad position. Benny Gantz only has not even a week to form his coalition government at the moment. And of course, Netanyahu is looking at annexing the Jordan Valley, which constitutes about 30% on paper of the West Bank. But of course, most of the Jordan Valley has already been taken for a closed military zone there, and most of the population of the Palestinians have already been pushed out.
Okay, Neri, there, Robert's pretty much picked up on every point that I was going to make to both of you, so let's break it down bit by bit. We'll look at where this leaves the Palestinians and the peace process in a moment, but I suppose let's first look at the political process and the effect of this decision on what's going on. Benny Gantz, I believe, just has a couple more days to try to form a coalition government. Netanyahu, as Robert said, wanted to before the election. He was saying that I'm going to annex the West Bank. What happens if Benny Gantz can't form a coalition government and we get into a situation where there has to be yet another election in Israel? Could this decision from the White House actually embolden more of the right-wing supporters in Israel to come out in their numbers and change the election result, which for the past two times has been pretty much producing a stalemate?
Well, that's right. I mean, in the immediate term, Benny Gantz has until tomorrow at midnight to form a government. So this decision last night from Washington came at a very delicate moment politically in Israel, despite the fact that U.S. officials are denying that it had any connection whatsoever to the coalition talks ongoing here for the past few weeks. I find that very hard to believe, just in the simple sense that they could have waited 3 days to announce this. But right, you know, this came at a delicate moment. Benny Gantz at least had the option of a minority government backed by Arab-Israeli lawmakers. That in and of itself was put under strain. Netanyahu used the announcement and put out a statement very clearly. It said, you know, while the U.S. is recognizing my gains, my victories, the right wing's ascendance, Benny Gantz is, at least in theory, thinking about forming a government with, as he termed it, terrorist supporters who don't recognize our claims to any of the land. So domestically here in Israel, it did play a role. In the longer term, I'm not entirely clear that it will have a major impact. We have to remember that Netanyahu, on the eve of the last election in September, came out and gave this press conference and said that, one of his first actions, if he were to win re-election, was to annex the Jordan Valley. That didn't quite put him over the top in the September election. So I don't know if in any future election it would have an even greater impact. And we shouldn't forget also the politics in America at the moment. The Trump administration is embattled. There are impeachment hearings on Capitol Hill. And Mike Pompeo himself is rumored to have his own political considerations, perhaps running for a Senate seat. So domestically in America, it's always plays well to the evangelical Christian base to be seen as supporting kind of maximalist Israeli claims to all of the West Bank.
Robert, after Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the Palestinians were saying this means that the Americans cannot play any future role in a potential peace process. They've said exactly the same thing again after this announcement from the White House. Is the peace process, even though it's completely stalled, is it now completely dead, at least, and certainly in terms of American involvement, as far as the Palestinians are concerned, completely gone?
It never truly existed, to be completely honest with you. I mean, there was hopes there from some sides that there could be some sort of settlement. But we have to understand that during the entirety of this process, Israel continued to expand its illegal settlements in the West Bank. It continues right now to operate a cost-free occupation in the West Bank, in that everyone else pays for the bills of the Israelis in the West Bank. They get huge funding to their military. And of course, the Palestinian Authority is funded by foreign powers, and the Palestinian Authority itself basically polices, let's say, the domestic situation within the West Bank in Area A, predominantly in Area B in the West Bank. So there's never been really any push towards a reasonable settlement to the solution. And of course, all of the refugees, like, these are the final status solutions, basically. Like, they've been all taken off the table. There's no chance whatsoever for a two-state solution now, and even those who had advocated for it throughout the years are dropping this now. They're saying that there cannot be a two-state solution. It's completely dead.
Neri, Robert, we need a whole hour to discuss this, if not more, but I'm going to have to thank you for your contribution to our news hour here on TRT World. Thank you both very much.